as you can see, I have cut out some stock for making the braces for the back. I'm going to use spruce. Lots of folks would use other types of wood, but I'm going to use spruce for this. I think it's a good choice. The back has a radius to it. It's not completely flat. The top is flat on this guitar. On the back, it has a 15-foot radius. And so I made this on the last guitar to use to mark braces with. Just makes it a lot simpler. You know, I guess I could just go ahead and cut them off to length first and then put this radius to them. Though I'm not so sure that would be any easier. Not really sure which way I want to do it. I probably will go ahead and cut them off the length first, and then I'll just, this is the center mark, and I'll just find the center of the brace and then radius it that way. I think that's the way I'll do it. One of the things I like about the metric system is the ability to divide things in half very easily. Of course, when you're measuring in thousandths, it's fairly easy also on inches, but anytime you're working in decimals, of course, it's a little easier than fractions. So I do like that part about the decimal system, and I would say I'm, better using the imperial system. I feel more comfortable, but on the other hand, the decimal system, I feel like I use it fairly well and can do it fairly well. The trick of these braces is remembering which orientation they go. These larger ones back here, they go flat on the back versus standing up vertical. So I just have to keep that in mind as I orient them. And there you go. So now they're all marked. I will just take these over, probably to the bandsaw, knock off the worst part of it, and then I'll just fine tune it at sanders. I'm not going to show that just because it's really fairly obvious how to do it, I think. Anyway, we're just going to cut the wood back until we get that nice long arch in there. Since these braces are all curved, I'm not going to use the go bar system. I am just going to use clamps and clamp it up in a curved manner. We're only talking about 4 braces, so it's not too difficult to do it this way. It's not simple either though, because the braces like to move and everything. So I've got them marked on here where they go. You probably can't see the pencil marks, but they're there. Some of these clamps already have leather on them, though I typically do add more leather anyway, just to be on the safe side. I may only be able to do 2 or 3 braces at a time because it takes a lot more clamps like this than you would think to get it really clamped up well. That seems to be fairly even squeeze out all the way across there, so I think I'll call that one good. And see if I can move on to this other one and get it in place. I may only be able to do 2 at a time. I've got a lot of clamps, but the ones that reach that far in, I don't have as many. And I do make some out of wood and plywood and things sometimes too if I really get in a pinch, but I'm in no huge hurry here, so I can just, if I was making a bunch of these, that'd be different. These little cheap Harbor Freight squeeze clamps are really very strong. I really do like them. They're good clamps. And they're really cheap. Cheap as in inexpensive. They've got a very strong spring. I think that's going to do me for right now. I could probably get one more clamped up, but I think I'll just wait on that. Let these set and dry for an hour or so, and then move on to the next couple. It's the next morning, and I have just taken the clamps off of this. These braces are fine. There is a slight radius to the back now, and the radius that was cut on these braces matches up with that real well, so it won't take much there to just glue this and clamp this in place. So let's get started. Well, I'm getting ready to try to fit the back to the sides, and these braces are just out of the clamps and they're rough cut and all that. So what I'm doing right now is I'm sawing off the ends of these. And you might ask, why didn't I just make them shorter to begin with? Well, the reason I did this was kind of an experiment. I always have trouble with the Padauk pulling these braces down flat. So I thought I'll leave them extra long, glue them up that way. It'll make a longer curve, you know, and stuff. So it supported it out to the end. It's not that hard to cut these off. They're actually fairly easy to cut off. Especially with this little razor saw, you just take your time and make a deep cut like this, and you can kind of tell when you're through. I don't think I'm quite through there, but that's okay. And then you can just take your chisel and just kind of tap the end here and it'll pop that off. Actually, it never does on camera, but it does, otherwise it does it fairly easy. So you can see a little chip there popped off. And we'll just keep working that down on all of these till we get them all off. Well, I got all the ends trimmed off as I was talking about there, and I am now carving the ends, and I'm just taking the chisel and knocking the ends down. And yes, I have a proper mallet, but it's over there in a drawer that's about 50 feet away, so this is much easier, so I don't have to get up. And we're not carving a statue, so this is easy. Now, if I was carving the Venus de Milo, I might have to go get my mallet. But then again, that was carved in stone, so I'd have to have some other chisels in addition. I'm just really trying to knock it down to get it thin enough to match it up to the sides so that I can mark it and cut it a final time. Yeah, that'll put me a little closer. It's going to take quite a bit more fitting and work to get this to fit to the sides really well. So I'll show you some progress as I go along. Thought I'd show you, hopefully you can see this one here is pretty much rounded over already. This one is completely square. And I'll show you how quickly you can make that happen. And of course on camera it won't work, but you know, off camera it works very quickly. So it just makes like a complete spring there, and you just go around it a few times. Just a few cuts is all it takes per side, and you just kind of round it over as you go, and you get about halfway, and then you just turn it over the other way. Turn it around for me in this case, and I do the other side the same way. It just doesn't take very long at all if you've got a sharp finger plane. Then the ends need a little special cutting to thin them down and to taper them and all that. And then it just like anything else, then you just got to go around and do the detail. But to get them roughed out like that just takes only a few minutes, just very quick. Of course, like I said, it helps obviously when the tool is very sharp. And these taller ones are about the same thing. You just leave them more peaked, not quite as round, almost rounded on the back. On the top, I make them a little more pointed. On the back, I make them a little more rounded. This doesn't take long at all. That's pretty close right there. It feels pretty good. It's mostly done by feel and looks. And then the ends again have to be cleaned up on each one. But that's the process. I'll show you more progress as we go. Well, I took this out of the mold. The top was glued on there. It is in very good shape. Very happy with it. Don't know how well you can hear this, but listen to the tone and ring of this thing. Sounds like an African drum from my perspective. It's definitely got a tone to it. So that part's really good, got good sustain. This, I've already, by the way, trimmed the top to the sides. I trimmed it with my little finger plane. And now I'm going to trim down this strip with the finger plane to this top of the neck here. This maple strip, you know, I always leave it a little proud so that I can trim it off smooth. It's carving fairly well, but I think it wants to be carved from the other direction. It's a little bit bumpy. Yeah, I think it's carving better this way. If you carve the wood in the direction which it wants to be carved, it typically comes off in a much smoother roll, and you don't see a lot of checking and, you know, little marks on your wood. It cuts it much smoother. I have to be careful right here. I don't want to hit this metal nut with my plane. Anyway, I'll get this really smooth and flat, and I'll put, you know, a straight edge across there and make sure I get it all real nice and even and flat. I'm not going to show any more of that. I just wanted to show you that you have to do these kinds of little steps, as I did on the top all the way around the sides, to even it out to the sides as well. If you've been following along, maybe the saga of the missing Dremel, Caleb was able to locate it and find it in my other The Dark Side shop, sitting on a welder. How it got there, I have no idea, though I suspect I had a hand in it. It's just one of those, you know, Alzheimer things.
Lately the signs upon your face match the signs on the road I take. Slow down, don't turn left, dead end ahead. The caution light is lit as we head for the last exit. But I wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind.
I wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind. Would the road be rough or paved? Could your love for me be saved? A highway or gravel road, either way it's the same old load. But I wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind.
Each day on the interstate, as I'm pulling my load of freight, I think of you with each passing sign I see. The road ahead looks rough, and the travel will sure be tough. But I wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind.
I wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind. Would the road be rough or paved? Should your love for me be saved? A highway or gravel road, either way it's the same old load. But I wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind.
Gonna look like a 12-string before long.
Is there someone around the turn that makes your little heart burn? There's no way he could love you like I do. Even though the light is lit and we're at the last exit, I still wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind.
I
Melinda, I'm sorry, Melissa, the last video clip, Caleb is busted a gut because they called you Melinda. Melinda was my ex-sister-in-law. Anyway, Melissa, that has nothing to do with anything. Well, my friends, I am trimming up this neck block. I left it a little bit tall, and on this side you can see that it is still very tall, I think, compared to the sides. On this side, it's even with it. And what I'm doing, because this back is arched and comes down, I'm actually carving that, using that to my advantage and carving it to the angle of that back. And you know, I'll have to do some trial and fit and look through the sound hole and see how well it works and all that. But, you know, I'm just taking my best guess at that right now, and I'm leaving it a little steep, probably, so I'll probably have to take more off of it. But I'm carving the front level, and I'm tapering it to the back. I think in a Shop Talk video, I showed different parts of this 12 string and let you hear how resonant the pickguard is. Well, I've got the pickguard cut out. Did I mention this was going to Scotland? I don't have the rose finished yet, but I thought I'd do that part on camera. You know, I've done this part obviously off camera, and those are all individual pieces. Each blue piece is a separate piece of wood. The white cross is a separate piece of wood, and then I inlaid over the top of that my rose, as you can see, and I dyed the stem green and the leaves green. The white there is just maple. The blue is just maple dyed blue. So anyway, it's looking pretty darn good. We need to do the yellow for the rose now, and we'll get started, and we'll do that on camera so that you can kind of see the process. I made a piece of the yellow Osage orange, and we're going to cut it out and then piece it into here. When we cut this out, I forget how many pieces, but roughly 15 pieces will make rose petals, and then we'll have to inlay each one of those rose petals into here. It gets kind of tricky, and we'll probably get the microscope out and do that under the microscope. First thing we're going to do though is load this into the laser cutter and cut out the rose petals on this piece. So here we go. I have printed a test plot so I will know where to put my yellow piece of wood. Here's the yellow piece of wood, and you can possibly see that it printed in that area right there. So I will just lay this over the top of that area. I will need to increase the voltage on this, which I don't think you can see on camera here, but I'm increasing it up to about 12.5, I think, is probably about where it needs to be. I've set the height adjustment already with my little block of wood here. When you put this on the rails and set the piece you're cutting to the bottom of this, then it's automatically at the right height, and I've already done all of that off camera. So it should be ready to cut. First thing I want to do is do the little engraving that are in the petals, so I'll do that first, and we'll do that with right now. And that really happens fast. There's very little engraving. So that's already done that quick. And now we'll cut out the petals. Hopefully it doesn't burn it too badly. It cuts out the petals very quickly, so it won't take long. I think that's it. When the petals come out of the laser cutter, I just pick up this whole, I always have a little sacrificial board underneath there, and I just pick up the whole board and everything and bring it over to my desk here so that I don't lose the little individual petals, because they will just fall right through and fall out. So let's see what we've got, and I can lift this up, and most of the petals stayed there, although a couple are still stuck in here, and now they're all out. There begins the jigsaw puzzle, fitting them all back into place. And it's not crazy hard, but it's not simple either. I'm going to clean out the cavity a little bit. There's some CA glue that's run into the area. I'll do that off camera. I'm just going to clean up the cavity a little bit, and then we'll probably bring in the microscope and start inlaying all these pieces. Well, to start off with, you can see I have my microscope rig all set up here. And I'll focus you down where the work is. Even though it probably won't be the best view, you can at least see what I'm doing. I have to pick up each little piece and put them in here and try to make sure that they're, you know, seated well and all that, because there's all kinds of little microscopic things that get in the way. Like right now there's things that are keeping this from getting up tight here. I can see them through the microscope. You cannot see them with your naked eye. Like there's a little spot right in here, and there's a little spot right back in here that is not letting this slide in there. And so what I have to do is take this X-Acto knife under here and clean these things out. So it's a very tedious job. The cavity was cut by the laser cutter, and it does a great job. It's just that you have to remember that the beam does cut on a slight angle because of the crisscross nature of the lens. And so the deeper you go, the more angle there is, and sometimes it is just enough that it won't allow, especially around the outer edges here, for things to go the way you want them to. So I'm just more or less straightening off those edges, and we'll see if we can fit it in here now. Looks like it might go now, perhaps. If you haven't worked through a microscope before, it's also kind of tough because you have to keep your eyes centered right in the center of the lenses, otherwise things darken up on you, you can't see through it. It's not as easy as it might seem. And then you've got your obvious size difference between what you're seeing through the scope and what you're doing in reality. That's really pretty good. It could be just a tiny bit better right there, so I'm going to try to clean that up just a little bit more, and then we'll call that good, I think. I have this on one of the lower magnifications. It can go much higher, and even on this low magnification, it changes the look of the wood at this level. It makes the wood look more almost like it's, I don't know, like it's almost like it's wet. I don't know, not quite like pasta or something, but not unlike it either. If it looks pretty good under the microscope, then with your naked eye, it usually looks really good. So, that's the case there on the first piece, I think. I also need to get a drawing out of my rows so I can get these parts in the right order and right place. Many of these parts get turned over, and I think I can show you. These are the parts laying out in here, and they get turned over and I can't tell which way they go, and so it's kind of hard to tell without a drawing, so I need to get a drawing out and take a close look at that as well. I've laid a couple more pieces on here. This piece I know goes right here. See if it'll fit up in there. Once you start getting them in there, that first piece is one of the more critical pieces because it has to be down here against these leaves and things to look good. I'm not sure, I still have it where I want it, but it's pretty close. And then you just start adding pieces on top of there. I use this little, I don't know what you call it, needle on a stick here. It's just a needle on a stick, so what it amounts to. And I stab the little parts with that, and then I can place them where I want them. They inlay fairly easily sometimes, but then like just the least little touch can just explode them and push them everywhere. You really have to have a delicate touch.
Through your mind, would the road be rough or paved? Would your love for me be saved? A highway gravel.
Don't know how much of that detail you can see, but boy, it is tedious.
Either way, it's the same old road, but I want wonder what I'd find if I could drive through your mind.
And with that, I think I've got all the parts in there. If they'll just lay still and stay together for a few seconds. You got to be careful how you push them together, because they, like I said, they will explode and just bounce out of there. That's really pretty good right there. So what I do typically is just take a drop of CA glue and drop it on there. And generally it doesn't float it away. It generally just moves in around it and locks it in place. And that's what it seems to have done there. It looks like it's flowed all through the whole rose, so we'll just give that time to set up. After a couple of minutes, I'll probably spritz it with the accelerator just to speed the process up. I wait a little while so it doesn't turn white. Looks like it's already just about firmed up, so I'll go ahead and spritz it. I believe that finished it off right there. So, very good shape. Let's see if you can see the finished product there. We'll try to give you a little better look in a minute once we get her cleaned up a little bit more. I've also decided to use the microscope to dye this back. I had to sand it off. Well, I filled it with CA glue, all the little pores and things, and then I sanded it back off, and now of course I'm having to re-dye it again. It's not easy to do. The dye likes to leak everywhere. But like I said, if you can make it look good under the microscope, and of course I can also detail it with the X-Acto knife and things under the microscope and clean up any where the dye has spread too far. So it'll come out real nice when we're done, but it's going to take a little bit more work to get there yet. Well, I'm not going to film any more of this, but that's the process, and I've got the green to put in there yet, and detailed cleanup with the X-Acto knife under here. So we'll do all of that and show you what it looks like when we're finished. Well, my friends, I believe I have it finished. Here's how I would rate something like this. No matter how good you do, no matter how perfect it is, it could always be better. In this particular case, the way I would surmise that is, for it to be better, someone else would have to do it. Because this is as good as I can do. I'm very happy with that. It looks real good, and to try to marry things together that wouldn't ordinarily be married together, I think it turned out about as well as I would have expected. I think it's going to look real nice on the guitar. I've already laid it on the top, and it looks real nice. I have oiled it. It's been oiled with the Be Good oil. I'm really happy with this stuff now. We've been using it a while. I'm kind of using it as a replacement of linseed oil, though the linseed oil will remain in use, mostly like to wipe down old finishes where the finishes are cracked and things like that. I'll still use the linseed oil, but for just plain bare wood finish, I'm just using this kind of stuff now. I'm pretty happy with it. I like the coating it gives it and everything, and the sheen. So it looks real fine. There's a close-up of it if it'll focus. I think it will. Turned out just the way I was hoping it would. Thought I'd go ahead and mention this, even though I probably shouldn't, because anytime you mention something like I'm about to mention, it just calls more attention to it and more people to make, comments about it, I guess. Most of the time, those are not good comments. That is that, the flag doesn't look square to the, body or whatever, and it's not. On the computer screen, this looked like that was the most symmetrical way to do it. When you put it on the sound hole now, I'm going, well, kind of wish I would have had the flag a little more square to the strings, but you know what? It is what it is, guys. And that's the way it turned out. On the computer screen, it looked just perfect. I thought, well, that looks real nice. It's nice and centered and everything. And I didn't give it any thought as to how it would look on the guitar with the strings. And so it's probably going to look a little cockeyed, but like I said, it is what it is. Well, my friends, you can see the design I've settled on for the fretboard. That is Osage orange cut out with the laser cutter. I have them just two-way taped on there at the moment. This one here has already been removed and I'm ready to route it out. I've got the router set at the proper depth, which is 50 thousandths of an inch. And yes, it would be great if this would fit in my laser cutter and just have the laser cutter route out the hole, but unfortunately this will not fit in there, and this is the only option I have at the moment, so here we go. I have to get the light down here where I can see, which is going to keep you from seeing probably. I'll put it down here at an angle and maybe you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, it's still not going to be quite good enough. That looks good right there. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And it just has to be done by hand. So here we go. All right, well, I'm going to have to hook up the air to this because I thought I could just, no bigger than this is, I could just blow it out of the way, but that just doesn't work very well. I need to keep the dust out of it constantly so that I can constantly see the line. Otherwise, I'm going to make a mistake. I'll hook up the air compressor to this and keep the dust blown away. I mentioned to you I needed to have my air connected, so I have my air supply going into this little block that I made. It holds the air there, points it right down at the bit. Perhaps you can see it. I don't know if it shows up. But anyway, it blows it right at the bit. That keeps it really clean. Works really, really good. It's worth its weight in gold. This is what the first one looked like. I went ahead and inlaid it and smoothed it and filled it, everything, and even oiled it, just to make sure that I was getting what I think I'm going to be getting. And in my opinion, that's just about as nice as it gets. I'll take that. And once the whole thing's done and it's smooth and clean, it's going to look beautiful. I'm not going to show any more of this. I'm going to save that for the, toward the end of the guitar when you see the whole thing. But that'll give you some idea what's coming. Well, my friends, once again, my assistant, apprentice, Caleb, forgot to, watch out for me and make sure I didn't put this veneer on this peg head until I was ready. And, he failed again. I mean, I just don't know what I'm going to do with that boy. But anyway, because I did put my veneer on here, that means that I'm going to have to route this hole out manually rather than possibly using the laser cutter. Oh well, stuff happens, I wanted to get it on there. I was in a hurry because I wanted to get these holes drilled and I wasn't thinking about the inlay at the time, and and the phone rings and 19 other excuses, and I'll write a book. So what I did was I just printed out my design on my label printer, found the center line, put it on the center line, got it where I wanted it. And now it's a question of holding it. Now I could go over to a big vise and hold it, no problem. But I like to work right here at my table. It's just more convenient. And it's also easier because I get the camera right here and I can film it easier. So here's how I'm doing this. I bought this, it's called a Shop Fox Vise. It's, by Grizzly. Shop Fox is one of their brands. Anyway, I bought this vise just on a whim one day when I was at their tent sale. I thought, that's a pretty handy little outfit there. And the price was right, so I just bought it. I think I had to fix something on it. Something was broke. I don't remember what it was now. But anyway, I fixed whatever it was. It's a heavy vise, and it also rotates for degrees. You can go to 45 degrees, which is very handy over at the drill press. Sometimes I use it there. But it's also handy right here on my desk because it's so heavy that you can put a lot of stuff in here and work on it right here at my desk. So, how am I going to hold this neck? Well, I also made this rig a while back, and I made this mostly for standing up at a big vise, You know, you can put this in a vise and you can rotate the guitar 360 degrees. You know, you can have it upside down, right side up, whatever. But it also works right here, right now, for this. I can put this in here like so, crank this down, so it's good and tight, it's good and heavy. I can rotate the angle here, whatever angle I want, and then tighten it down. And then I can put my neck right in here, like so, and tighten this down. While it's probably not the most stable thing there is, it's stable enough. And so then, I think you can see here, that I can put my router right on here, and I can adjust my chair to the height that I like to have it right here. Everything should be just fine. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'll get out the router now and we'll route out the cavity. Okay, just to set the record straight, Caleb wasn't even in the shop the day I glued this all together, so I don't even think he was here. So just, you know, I know 99.9% of you know I'm just poking fun and just being silly. But for that 1/10 of 1% who don't realize that, come on, pull your head out. Let's see, we're going to go ahead and route this out here. I think I've already got the router set to the proper depth because I just routed something yesterday, and I know it's at 50 thousandths, so, and I know that's what my inlay is, so I should be good to go. I don't think I need to change anything or do anything. I'll route a little hole here and test it just to be sure, because you always want to know that you're routing at the proper depth. Right where the rose is, it's a big cavity anyway, and I can just route a circle right there in the middle of the rose. It won't hurt a thing, and I can check my depth. Immediately, I need the air compressor blowing on this because instantly it just dusts up. You can't see a thing. So, you know, I knew that anyway, but that just was a reminder right there, routing that little hole, that I got to get the air hooked up. It routed it at 52 thousandths according to this. Keep in mind that paper's on there. The paper's probably 3 or 4 thousandths. So when I take the paper off of there, the hole will be shallower. Yeah, it's 52 thousandths. That's perfect. So when I get the paper off there, it'll be right about 50 thousandths. It should just be perfect. And inlay is actually about 51 thousandths, so we should be good. I'll get my air hooked up and we'll come back to this.